Good day, everyone. My name is Michelle Cerisi, and I am the Associate Director of Marketing and Communications with the National Association for Business Economics. We are pleased to present today's event, Part 5 of the CBE Careers in Economics webinar series, Economics, Careers in Transportation and Logistics. Before we start the program, I wanted to quickly point out a few other upcoming Nave events and offerings. We're less than 2 weeks away from the 38th Annual Nave Economic Policy Conference, March 20th through 22nd in Washington, D.C. This year's event will feature keynote addresses by Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell and Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta President Raphael Bostic. Advanced registration deadline is March 16th, and in-person and virtual registration options are available. Please go to nave.com/events for more information. Be sure to sign up for our upcoming webinar this coming Monday, March 14th at 11 a.m. Eastern, the first webinar hosted by the new Nave Climate, Economics, and Finance Roundtable, Transitioning to Net Zero by 2050, Lessons from Emerging Markets. Please go to nave.com/events to sign up. Early bird registration deadlines are approaching for several of Nave's educational offerings. Please visit nave.com/CBE for more information on the courses seen here and additional offerings. Finally, just a reminder that Nave's online jobs board is econjobs.org. Econjobs.org connects employers and top economics candidates. Head to econjobs.org to find your next hire or your dream job in economics. Now on to today's event. Note that we will have Q&A open throughout today's discussion. You can submit a question to the panelists at any time using the Q&A box. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Li-Ying Gu, Vice President of Economic Affairs and Research at Airports Council International, North America. Li-Ying, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Michelle, for the introduction, and many thanks to everyone for joining today's webinar, highlighting economics careers in transportation and logistics. As Michelle introduced me already, my name is Li-Ying Gu. I'm with the Trade Association, represents airports both in the US and Canada. And for the webinar today, we are going to spend the first half of the webinar to have a panel discussion, followed by a Q&A session. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time in the Q&A box. We will address those questions during the Q&A session. We are very fortunate to have 4 distinguished speakers participating in today's webinar, and they are Jordan Frisbee. He's a CBE of Port Houston. Ivana Mazea, she is with UPS, and Anthony Smith with FreightWaves, and Aaron Terraces from Convoy. So instead of me introduce each of the speaker, I'm gonna actually turn over to each speaker to tell us about their stories in terms of career path. And so I'm gonna turn it over to Aaron first.
Great, thanks, Li-Ying. So I'm Aaron Terraces, Director of Economic Research at Convoy. In case you're not familiar with Convoy, we are a digital freight platform. So basically we connect companies that need to move goods by heavy truck, retailers and manufacturers, with independent truckers searching for loads. Through all of this, we use data and automation to make the process more efficient and reduce the carbon footprint of freight. This chart shows kind of the intro to our company. If we go to the next slide, it shows some of the truckers we work with at the top, some of the retailers and manufacturers we work with at the bottom. Off to the right, you see a screenshot of our app. And in the middle, some of the efficiencies that we introduced into that freight matching process. Just briefly about me, so I've been at Convoy about 3 years working on economic research. Before that, it's been about 5 years at Zillow. Started my career as an economist at the Treasury Department. So with that, I think I hand it off to Anthony.
So my name is Anthony Smith. I am the lead economist over at FreightWaves, and it's a digital platform, a software as a service, a SaaS program, where we have a platform called Sonar. And Sonar is this amazing dashboard. It's almost like a Bloomberg terminal for freight and logistics, where it shows every aspect of the supply chain, where Some of the lane activities are freight volumes, tender rejections, anything you really want to see, you can really be able to pull up on a lane by lane basis within our tool. But in our next chart, the interesting thing that we'll be able to see is that FreightWaves is made up of a lot of different components. And so we have different aspects that go a little bit closer to the consumer, like American Shipper. But we also have an outlet called FreightWaves TV, which I'm also a part of, which is our media outlet that really tracks FreightWaves or freight activity and supply chain and transportation news topics around the clock. So it's streaming 24/7 essentially, with around 6 hours of live content right now, and also being ramped up on a monthly basis. But my background in economics, I started off with forestry products, paper and pulp, things like that, before transitioning into economic consulting. And then I had opportunity to work with a lot of different fields, such as manufacturing, construction, software, different services, things like that, before I made my way in-house at a building products company. And ever since, I found my way into supply chain, and I've been at FreightWaves for, I think it'll be 3 years, coming up on the 14th of this month. So that is me, that is FreightWaves, and I'm excited to be here today.
I'm assuming that this is my cue, Liang. Hello, everyone. My name is Ioana Mazare, and I am the Vice President of Strategy at UPS. My career at UPS many months ago, after I finished my PhD at Western Michigan University. And I started my career in academia, in fact, teaching at various universities around the country before joining the industry, since my interest was always in applied economics. As I said, I started my career at UPS filling various roles as a forecaster, business planner, staff economist, also with roles in advanced analytics and marginal cost. All these positions gave me an opportunity to apply my skills, even though in some cases, the word economist was not in the job title or the job description. And I used along the way in my roles, sometimes more of my technical skills, sometimes more of my theoretical skills. After 13 years at UPS, in fact, I moved on and I worked for a startup named Rody, which is a crowdsourced delivery platform for same-day delivery, where my responsibility was to work on a dynamic pricing system alongside engineers who were developing the app capabilities, optimizing the matching of drivers with senders. 2 years later, I joined another company, TTX, a rail car pooling provider for the 9 major North American railroads, where I filled the role of director for economic planning, as well as their chief economist. And more recently, I returned to UPS, as I said, in my role as the enterprise data strategy lead, a role that in a way is a culmination of my experience so far. So my overall experience was as an economist, and as a professional, has been all along in the transportation industry, many opportunities, many facets, and I'm really excited to be here to talk to you about the many opportunities in this industry. Just finishing off, I want to mention that I'm also on the faculty for the Transportation and Supply Chain Institute at Denver University, where I teach economics courses in the master's program designed for transportation industry professionals. Program designed for transportation industry professionals.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jordan Frisbee from Port Houston. My current title is Business Process Manager, a role I transitioned into about 1 year ago. That's more of a capital planning role. But before that, I spent about 10 years in an economics role at Port Houston. I completed my master's degree in economics at Penn. I moved straight to Port Houston, and it was a very fun and interesting place to start off my career in the economics world. I've been active in Nave pretty much since that time. I did earn the CBE designation, and I'm also pleased to be the incoming president of the Houston Economics Club, which is a local Nave chapter.
Thank you, everybody. Now that we share our story, and we actually wanted to launch our first polling question, and I would encourage you to respond. We wanted to know, have a little bit better idea of who the audience are for the webinar today. So Michelle, if you don't mind, if you can launch the first polling questions, I would really appreciate that. As Michelle is launching the first polling questions, what I hear from the self-introduction is that I think, the five of us collaboratively represent, aviation, rail, roadway, port, physical and digital infrastructure. So it's all transportation and logistics, related. And so I wanted to ask the first question, which is what makes the transportation industry attractive for a young economist? And I'm going to actually ask Ioana to address this question first, and then we'll go to others.
The transportation and logistics industry, when you think about it, it represents the backbone of the economy, and it literally moves the economy, whether it is grain, a turbine, or an iPhone, whether it is produced domestically or imported. For any company operating in this space, the health and performance of the macroeconomy is critical to the bottom line. So economists are quite valuable at explaining and making sense of the trends, the news, and filtering what is important for the transportation industry. The pandemic that ravaged the world for the last 2 years exposed the shortfalls of globalization, and it really made the world supply chain known to everyone. Technology and the way consumers shop are also changing the industry at a pace faster than ever. So all these trends that correlate with the macroeconomy, they correlate with trade, with behavior and optimal decision making. So basically everything that an economist is equipped to study and analyze. Not to mention that when shocks of any kind, pandemic, war, unfortunately, oil crisis occur, modeling and explaining the various scenarios that can happen are helping businesses to prepare to react and to plan to keep companies going or be ahead of the curve. So there are many opportunities for economists to make an impact in an industry that it's constantly changing and that constantly needs information and the correct interpretation of what matters.
Thank you, Ioana. And I want to check with the other panelists to see if anybody else would like to add to what Ioana already mentioned. Anthony.
I can add a little bit. I mean, I think she did an amazing job of breaking that down and brings a lot of insight to my eyes, even as I work into this industry myself. I think as a young economist, I was obsessed with forecasting and getting an idea of what's about to happen, and really being able to project some of those things into my forecast models, and really being able to work in the supply chain really gives you a leg up on really being able to see where demand is and what's moving into the country, what's happening once it gets into the country, and how's it getting dispersed. So it's just another layer that you can kind of throw into your macroeconomic forecast toolkit.
Thank you, Anthony. I just want to share the first poll results. So for the participants on the webinar today, the most represented is with master's degree with 38%, followed by bachelor's degree and PhD, both at 25%. So this is a very highly educated group of participants for the webinar today. I think you mentioned the industry is has a lot of opportunities for young economists. So what makes the economist valuable for an organization, and what can they bring to the table for the company? I'm actually going to ask Ioana to address this question again.
I'm happy to, Liang. You at some point you'll have to stop me because this is quite exciting for me to talk about, and it really represents the work that I've been doing and what I think was the value that I brought to all the companies that I worked for. And I would start with what makes an economist valuable is the rigor of the process. We apply a very methodical approach to whenever we are asked a question. And our ability to walk anyone through the steps of the process to justify, rigorously the methodology, the approach, why we're doing what we're doing, discovering or filtering down what really the question is, right? Breaking down to what is that I'm really asked to analyze. And then uncovering, right, of all the indicators and all the theories in front of us to be able to narrow down and make sure that when we come up with a final set of data, it's the set that will actually give us the proper answer. And then putting the story together, right? We have question in front of us, we have a methodology, and then the results. The fact that we can interpret and explain what that means and what to do with that information, it's critical. And of course, the quantitative skills, the data skills, I cannot emphasize enough how valuable they are and how their value continues to increase. The amount of data is growing exponentially every day, and I know that. I'm trying to deal with how that approach needs to be structured at UPS as we speak. And our ability to structure, to organize and disseminate, clean up the data and understand what's important. And of course, the quantitative skills, as I mentioned, are all values for any corporation.
Thank you, Ioana, for explaining what the economists bring to the table. And I actually have another follow-up question. What is the role of an economist? How is that role viewed by other people in the organization, by your senior leadership, by the colleagues or other peers? And I'm actually going to start with Aaron to address this question.
Yeah, thanks, Ling. I would echo kind of everything that Ioana said, that I think business leaders are desperate for understanding. I think with so much noise, so much data nowadays, they want someone who they can kind of turn to that is anchored in fact, anchored in statistics, but also can make sense of that. So I think that is one way that economists review an organization, is this source of understanding. The second, I think, which is particularly important to me, and I think in my organization, I remember when I started my career as an economist, one of my mentors told me at the Treasury that the role of an economist in any organization is to be the conscience of that organization, to be truth tellers, to have the courage to be very honest about what we know and what we don't, and what is anchored in reality and what is not. I think sometimes business people, marketing folks, or product folks like to have a little bit of wishful thinking, and our job is to bring them back to reality. So I think that's kind of one way that that's how they view us, at least at my organization.
Thank you, Aaron. And I'm gonna turn to Jordan. to add your thoughts as to the role of economists, how it's viewed by other people in your organization.
Well, as an economist, you gain a lot of insight into market forces and what structural market interactions. It just becomes very clear to you, and in a way that it may not be clear to your colleagues. Why are prices rising? Why did this demand appear or disappear? So you have to, some ways the insights are very welcome, and in some ways you have to frame them not in economics speak, but in a way that your management can understand and wrestle with based in their experience and vocabulary.
Thank you, Jordan. Anthony, do you have anything else to add?
Sure, I think I definitely have to echo some of the sentiments from my fellow panelists here as well. And from my organization and different organizations I've been a part of, it's definitely been a role of almost like a compass, really being able to help guide. And I think, as Aaron mentioned, really being able to be a truth teller as to what's going on within the company. From my time consulting, there were times where you were working with an organization or company that was experiencing robust growth. And it's great to watch it happen. But sometimes it was because of, a lot of times, and most of the times, it was because of market conditions that was really propelling the growth. Or if it was a slower growth season or any type of retraction, it was also a lot of times in accordance to the market conditions. So while you can do things to really increase and improve your efficiencies internally, also being able to monitor what's happening in the market, I think, was something that really what some of my colleagues and fellow analysts and economists were able to look to me for. So I think that's going to be one of the big areas that I get looked to from time to time for that compass, just to make sure that we are acting in an appropriate time frame, because there's a lot of times where you are in a situation as a business where there may be a shift on the horizon and some type of trend that's happening, and you want to be able to react accordingly and not reactively before a trend may take hold and really kind of shift your business or organization.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. And now I'm just curious as to what kind of, skills, computer programs, softwares, all these hard skills that, young professionals, if they wanted to pursue the economist career, what would be important. So, and specifically now, you know about what are the skills required for your job, what additional coursework or areas of information that you would like to have, back at that time. And so I would ask Ioana to answer this question first.
This may come a bit surprising, but I wish I was exposed to more non-technical communication. So for an economist, exposed to years and years of technical lingo to theoretical content, which is absolutely essential for our formation as a professional. Going into the business and being able to articulate and translate complex technical concepts into simple language. And I believe that Anthony and Jordan both alluded to this, is very important in a corporate setting, because that makes everyone understand how to impact and how to influence the decision making. Communicate clearly in simple terms to people outside of your field. And the concepts, also the way you communicate these concepts depend and they change from one level to another throughout the organization. The higher up you go, the less time you have to say things, and you have to know what matters to each level. And that is something that I don't think students learn enough in school. So for someone who wanted to be successful from the very beginning in a non-academic setting, I think it's essential to have some exposure to how to communicate and tell your story rigorously, but in simpler terms.
Thank you, Ioana. I couldn't agree with you more on this point. Anthony, do you have any additional ideas regarding information or coursework for young economists to undertake?
I think Ioana really outlined that perfectly, and I couldn't agree more. Of course, I wish I would have applied myself a bit more with some of the technical aspects. I was unfortunately trying to balance athletics and sports while also completing the degree. So I think I didn't apply myself as much as I should have with some of the more technical aspects of like, learning more skills like e-views and really kind of refining. Even Excel is very useful on my day-to-day, and just being able to work in a spreadsheet that many other executives might be working in as well. But I think Ioana hit the nail on the head when you're talking to, it's one thing to have the right answer and the right solution for what it is, and you can have all of the correct answers for all the problems, but if you can't communicate it in the best way, it's going to fall on deaf ears and the solution won't be founded at all.
Thank you, Anthony. Jordan, do you have anything else to add?
Echoing the comment about communication, that's probably the most important skill to add to your toolbox. In fact, you'll see in your career people with no technical skills at all, and they're good communicators, and their careers can accelerate very quickly solely based on their communication ability. So would like to just throw in two more things. One is, now if you load up with as much programming as possible, plus your Economist tool set, whether that's at the bachelor's, master's, or PhD level, not only are you going to open up the Economist career path for yourself, you're also opening up a potentially much larger set of careers, which is the data science world, which is super hot right now. Then the last point I'll make is, if you're an economist in an organization that's not very economics focused, you may end up working with the finance team a lot. And if you have some basic accounting knowledge to read the spreadsheet and some basic finance knowledge to be able to fudge your way through finance model, it's going to make working with those teams a lot easier than if you have to learn it on the fly.
Thank you, Jordan. Aaron, I just want to check to see if you have anything else you would like to offer.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would echo all of everything that's already been said. My particular advice is know yourself. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. Some of us are stronger at soft kind of communication. Some of us are stronger at the technical. Shore up your weaknesses. I'd say that, in general, the candidates that I interview, I think they often struggle most with code quality, kind of making reproducible, shareable, production quality code, familiarity with version control and Git, something that I kind of really wish I had learned early on, and using kind of open source tools again in a way that, so the code quality, I think, is something that often gets overlooked, particularly in economics programs, but increasingly is expected of economists wherever you work.
Thank you, Aaron. How about membership in professional associations like NAVE? Is that helpful to your career? And what other associations or resources would you recommend? And I'm going to ask Ioana to answer this question first.
I've always been part of associations in grad school and beyond. Nave has always been one of them, but any regional conferences where you can attend meetings, events, and meet other professionals at the same level with you, and also more senior professionals. Any opportunity to network and form long-term relationships. Any such opportunities are valuable because they will carry you during your career, and your network and your group of close partners and associates and contributors are always going to provide opportunities for you in return. The American Economic Association is another one, as well as I mentioned, any regional associations, depending on the school and the part of the country where your school is, are all wonderful opportunities.
Thank you, Ioana. Actually, I would add that there's another committee called for the TRB, Transportation Research Board, which is part of the National Academy of Science. They have a committee for aviation economics and forecasting. So if you're interested in aviation and economics and forecast, that would be another place for you to be associated with. And I also wanted to ask if, Jordan, if you have any other additional information you would like to add.
As a Nave local chapter president, I have to say, make sure to join your local Nave chapter, and I'll take payment for that later. No, just kidding. No, it's all they're all around the country. They're listed on the major Nave. They're listed on the Nave website. So find the chapter in your area and get plugged in. Went to a lot of the fly-in Nave week-long trainings when I was earlier in my career. That was definitely a big plus. So just can't say enough about Nave is a great way to connect. Now, it's a big mix of, if you're a young professional, it's a big range of ages, especially at the national conferences. So don't expect it to be just all young professionals having fun like some other. It's just a big range of ages and experiences, but no, invaluable. Definitely recommended to everyone.
Thank you, Jordan. And I want to check with Aaron and Anthony to see if you have any other suggestions in terms of professional associations to be engaged. Oh, okay. All right, just checking. Do you wish that there had been any more professional development opportunities in your undergraduate or graduate program? And I'm going to actually ask if Anthony, you can address this question.
Definitely, I think this is one that kind of comes back to one of the points Ioana mentioned earlier, and that is around really developing some of those soft skills and presentation skills as well. I know at the end of the day, a lot of times you're going to have to do a lot of this analysis, and as you get further and further into your career, it's not just technical speak that you're talking to other economists or analysts and other technical professionals that may be in your field, but you'll have to break down this information into an actionable way. So you have to get to the concise parts of what is it? What does it mean? Why do I care? What can I do about it? And once you kind of are able to follow those cadences and keep it engaging and keep it actionable, I think those are going to be the skills that I wish I would have honed in a little bit more on being able to present. So if you are, our students still, it sounds like most folks here are past their student days, but take a little bit of initiative potentially in some of those group projects. I mean, when you are, hey, I don't want to present, I'll just help on the back end. Also work on also being able to present those findings and present that information. As Jordan mentioned earlier, you'll see a lot of folks, a lot of individuals that skyrocket because they're able to communicate very effectively. And when you can break out and break down some of those problems and issues in a very effective way, it makes a world of difference.
Thank you, Anthony, for mentioning all the soft skills that need to be, redeveloped And I wanted to actually just go back to the hard skills, what computer programs or software do you wish you had mastered more thoroughly before entering the job market? I think I heard previously, some of you mentioned eViews, Excel spreadsheet. Are there anything else? And I'm actually going to ask Aaron to address this question.
Yeah, I'd say anything open source. I think kind of my sense is that a lot of companies, unless you're working in information sensitive, kind of highly national security realm, are increasingly moving toward open source software. So R and Python are super important, at least for us. R for research, Python for production. That's the joke we tend to make. Those are the things I wish I definitely had kind of focused on more early on.
Thank you, Aaron. Ioana, do you have anything else to add?
Just that exposure to any programming period, or really more applied courses that would expose one to the entire data and modeling pipeline, to be self-dependent on extracting your own data. So relational database language, SQL query capabilities, that makes you, self-serve, being able to self-service you and not depend on others in a large organization, being able to know how to connect the data to an to a code or a program that you're developing, automate your models and running the models, as well as any software that you can put your hands on. Software, once you learn a couple of these languages and the structure, you can pretty much learn anything. Python was not quite a thing when I was in school, but that didn't stop me from learning. And by the way, I don't think that I say anything new here, but when you're done with school, you're not done with learning. You keep on taking courses, you keep on educating yourself, you keep on staying in touch with the latest research, because that's what will make you valuable, not only now, but in the long run. So really, our duty as professionals is to continue learning and make sure that we are staying in touch and competitive with young folks that come behind us.
If I could just add to echo SQL, what Ioana said, I feel like SQL is such an easy thing to learn that it makes a new hire really stand out, because it's not typically something new hires and new grads learn. If you spend 3-4 weeks learning it before applying, it'll really make a resume stand out.
Thank you, Aaron. And I just want to add also that in terms of the soft skills that when we mentioned, communication and presentation skills, Nave does offer courses that I actually take those courses personally. So I would highly encourage you to look into those courses to enhance your soft skills. And now actually is the time for us to launch our second poll. Michelle, if you can launch the second poll that's related to the participants' employment opportunities, because we're going to talk about hiring and interviews. So while the poll is open, I would highly encourage you to participate. And at the same time, we're going to start. I have some questions for the panelists. So what are you looking for when hiring an economist? What are the things that would get them the initial interview opportunities? And I would actually direct this question to Anthony first.
Certainly. So whenever I'm in on an interview, one of the things I'm looking for is just that genuine curiosity and what you were able to kind of glean ahead of time for kind of getting into the interview. So I think one of the great tool sets in the Economist has is being able to find out really quick what are the 60 to 70% of the levers that really move a certain segment or a certain area that you're studying or researching. And say maybe you don't have any experience or previous experience within a certain field that you're interviewing for, maybe it's a supply chain, But if you're able to really get an idea of what some of the big movers within that sector of the supply chain are, I think it's impressive to me, because it's not that you're not familiar with that segment or that industry, but that you're able to digest the big movers within that industry and then factor that data, that information into a potential solution. And so I think really being able to have that curiosity, really being able to digest some of that data and some of the big movers or variables within your segment, and really being able to make an actionable or an informed decision around it.
Thank you, Anthony. And I also want to ask Ioana to address this question as well.
So if I heard you correctly, Liang, this was a two-part question. First, what things would get the initial interview? And what I'm looking for is a good mix of theoretical courses, a good mix of different economics courses in different economic areas, microeconomics, macroeconomics, and also quantitative courses. And I usually would like more than one, because like with everything else, first course is just laying the foundation, and you need a second course to really grasp the concepts and go into more depth. And that really shows me what your areas, what your strengths could potentially be, based on the mix of courses that I see on paper. I also would like to see an applied project. Don't forget that if you apply to a job in the industry, the empirical analysis is what matters for the most part, right? Your quantitative skills, but not only on the theoretical side. I want to see it applied, because when this goes to the second part, when I go for an interview, or when I have a conversation with a candidate, I'm probing into those courses and into those projects, because I want to see whether there is a fundamental understanding of the methodology applied, of the techniques, and why that logic was applied.
Thank you, Ioana. And Jordan, I wanted to also check with you to see if you have the CBE certificate. And so what does that mean to you? And could the CBE get someone an interview?
Well, I think when I earned the CBE, I was surprised how my management reacted. They seemed very pleased all the way up to the top. People, it's all about who are you trying to impress. If you're trying to get a hardcore theoretical economics job, if you're going into academia, it may not be as impactful, but if you come into industry, I think it's definitely going to get you some traction in and of itself. And the further away the organization you're working for is from the heart of economics, I think the more impressive it's going to be. That's my opinion. But obviously, it all, just like any other certification like that, you need to be able to confidently and clearly explain what you learned in all the courses you took to earn the certification, and explain the other steps that went into it in a clear and compelling way. I think it's a big net positive.
Thank you, Jordan. So during the interview stage, what are the things you're looking for from a candidate? In addition to like asking preparing for the interview questions, what other projects or jobs do you have the candidates do on site for those on-site interviews? I wanted to see if all of you can share some information on the hiring, the interviewing process. So I'm going to actually direct this question to Aaron first. Aaron.
Yeah, I think we all have to start by acknowledging the reality that the interview process has changed dramatically over the past 2 years. I think going on site for an interview, I'm not sure of many companies that are still doing that most first round, and even often subsequent rounds are remote now. I think the things that we're looking for, there is typically kind of a technical skill-based assessment, problem solving, technical problem, kind of live coding, that kind of thing. And for those sessions, we are looking typically for two things. Does the candidate meet the baseline for the role? And is there kind of a standout or exceptional kind of expertise on some dimension, either on depth in a particular domain or in breadth? The second kind of area is values-based assessments. Kind of most companies have corporate values that they typically look for when they're hiring. Those are on most companies' websites. And I know a lot of companies interview specifically looking for examples, concrete examples with specifics, where the candidate can describe what they did specifically, what was the context and the outcome according to those values. And, I know many of our interviews have something called the bar raiser, which is, an interviewer outside of the team that doesn't necessarily work directly with the candidate, but whose role is really to see, does this candidate stand out on some dimension? And that's kind of what the role of the bar raiser is, to make sure that the team that's directly hiring isn't, being biased in any way.
Thank you, Aaron. Anthony, do you have anything else to add?
I definitely agree with what Aaron mentioned, especially the aspect of being able to work well with the values of the company. Because there's been many times where I've been a part of a team of economists, which is always fun and interesting because you can have 5 economists with all differing views, and that's always fun to have some of those roundtables. But there's been also times where I am the sole economist for a company, and I'm, tucked away doing some research, putting together some thoughts, some forecasts, some projections, things like that. And so you're going to be called on, so you're going to might be working independently. But if you can really be trusted to work independently, really be able to, as Aaron mentioned, have those core values and align with the company as well, I think those are going to be like those big things that I look for as well. Is just, hey, this person can work independently. They can communicate what their findings are and really be able to present them in I think, a meaningful manner.
Thank you, Anthony. Ivana, do you have anything else to add in terms of interviews? How to better prepare for that? Yeah.
So I want to start by saying that we know how stressful interviewing is because we've been there. We got jobs somehow, and we started our career somewhere. And so just know that interviewers know that. And so for that reason, whether it's in person, which these days it's more rare, but even online, I'm looking for an honest, real conversation just to learn the personality, the person, and as Aaron Anthony mentioned, we're looking for a good fit to see whether that person fits into the team. If it's a team setting, it's important for someone who is part of the team to collaborate well with the people around them. And by the way, that goes both ways. For you as an interviewer, you come in, you sometimes like what you see, and sometimes you decide to move on and select something else. I also I'm looking. I mean, I ask some basic questions that sometimes candidates are not prepared, and this is my advice. One, read the news. Be in touch with what's happening in the economy. Be ready to talk about what the GDP was last quarter. What's the inflation and supply chain. We are in the field. We are doing our homework every day and read. But sometimes, as a young professional, when you're looking for a job, you forget that you're preparing for the real world. So be prepared for that. And then the other question that I'm asking is, what do you know about my company? basic question, right? When you go, this shows that you're actually interested and you care about this job, right? It's not only another check on your, way to another job. So just doing the basic homework to prepare for an interview will go a long way. That impresses me before I check or I confirm that the professional skills, the economic skills are up to par. Right? And then I just have a light conversation. Sometimes, interview techniques and policies are different at different companies. But I usually find that if I have a conversation about a project with someone during that interview process, just keeping it conversational, I can gauge whether they know what they're doing, they know what they're talking about. And again, it's that story that you put together about, do you know what you were solving for, how you collected your data, the methodology, why you chose that methodology, the results, and why those results mattered.
Thank you. Thank you, Ioana. Thanks to Aaron and Anthony for sharing, how to better prepare for these interviews. I do want to share the polling results for the second question. We do have about 17% of the respondents indicating that they are seeking for opportunities. However, I do recognize that some people may be having a full-time job, but they are still seeking opportunities, and I didn't allow those people to choose both options. So the percentage could be much higher. And as we're getting close to the end of the webinar, I do want to answer some audience questions. So we do have one question here that's asking you to comment on the relative benefits of a graduate education, both master's and PhD, including the ROI given the cost of graduate education versus an entry-level beginning in either government or private industry. So I wonder if any of the panelists would like to address this question.
I would say when it comes to that kind of education, just if you love it, do it. And if you don't love it, there's a place for you, and it's called business school. Or something else, like you can become an actuary. There's a lot easier ways to make money in industry if you're just looking for a job and you have the mental horsepower to get highly educated than economics. But if you love economics, then that's what you should pursue for further education.
I cannot agree more with you, Jordan. I think that, my approach was when I wake up and I go to work, I want to love what I'm doing. So that's your ROI, right? We are economists. There's a hidden cost, there's a hidden benefit that you cannot measure necessarily in money. If you do your work, if you are passionate, and you strive to do your best every day, the benefits are coming. Not in a day, not in a month, but it's going to pay off. Hard work and good work ethics and professionalism and good skills, solid skills, they all pay off in the long run, and I have no doubt saying this.
Thank you, Ioana. There's one more question. How do you recommend folks go about finding a mentor? I think that's a very important aspect. So if I wonder any of the panelists would like to address this question.
I can take it. I'm unmuted, so that is a wonderful question. And the fact that you're thinking about a mentor is you're halfway there. I would start with professors, someone who inspired you, where you went a good collaborator or someone who gave you good advice and you relate to in school. And then conferences. And then when you get to the workplace, just talk to people. I was, networking, getting out of your comfort zone to meet folks and ask them, what do you do? Will go a long way. And you make relationships, and mentorships are going to just flow naturally from there. Just setting up monthly meetings, lunch meetings will get you connected, and you will know, who gives you good advice and who resonates with you.
If I could add, I'd say that if I look back at my career, the most impactful professional mentors I've had, I didn't call mentors, I called friends. Just talking to people, being genuinely interested in them and their stories, that's the way you learn and kind of build those people who you can turn to when you do have a tough question, because you never know when that's going to come up. So think of kind of building friendships rather than someone who's going to tell you all the solutions.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Ioana. And I'm going to ask Michelle to launch the third polling questions. That will be our last one. And in closing, I want to thank Nave for organizing all these careers in economics webinar series. I wish I had access to all of this information that's being presented. And I want to let's give a round of applause to all our speakers today. They've done an outstanding job sharing their stories and with a lot of information. I hope you all have time to digest after the webinar. And I wish all of you good luck with pursuing the careers in economics. And I'm gonna turn it back to Michelle for closing remarks.
Okay, and actually, I think we wanted to just go through a few more slides about some career resources at the panelists' organization. So Aaron, if you just want to talk a bit
Sure.
about Convoy.
Yeah, we've got a number of open roles if anyone's interested. Convoy.com/careers. Search under data science. There's research scientist, a data scientist, and business intelligence engineer. I think kind of those are slightly different job families, but economists fit well into all of them, depending on where your particular strengths are. Don't hesitate to reach out with any questions if you have. So I'll pass it on to whoever's next.
Okay, Ioana.
Thank you. You can see the website for searching for jobs at UPS. I also encourage you, just as an example, to enter in the search bar marketing data scientist. Again, as I mentioned, a lot of jobs don't necessarily read as an economist job in the title, but when you go to the description, you'll see that there are a lot of opportunities for jobs in various departments as a data scientist, which is another name for someone who has very strong analytical skills, who have data skills and can solve problems using quantitative models and methods. There are possibilities to have jobs for economists in various departments as well. So there's no end to the the opportunities that economists have in the industry. So I encourage you to apply.
Thanks. And Jordan?
Yeah, we're hiring economic analysts. That's my old role. It's a great role. Houston's a fun place to live. This is going to be a on-site role. So if you're interested, the instructions are there, or you can find it on our LinkedIn page.
And Anthony, did you just have any comments you wanted to add about where people could possibly find jobs at FreightWaves?
For sure, yeah. FreightWaves, we're always hiring for data engineers and data scientists as well. It's on the freightwaves.com website. go down, scroll to the careers aspect or link, and you can see all the openings there. But just as Ayana mentioned, there are a lot of roles that don't explicitly say economist, but you'll have the tool set and the technical skills to really be helpful in that area as well.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Before we disconnect, as a reminder, recordings of past webinars are available in the news feed on the Nave Connect app, which can be downloaded in the App Store and through Google Play. Nave members can also access webinar recordings through the digital archive on nave.com. Today's program is copyright 2022 by the National Association for Business Economics, with all rights reserved. This concludes the